We have been, in recent weeks, recording our homilies on Sundays so that others who aren't able to make it to retreat can participate in that way. So I've asked Bill to arrange that. So just wait just a moment. Thank you. Well, weddings are not simple, are they? Either being a guest or being a host. We've all been to weddings. We know what it's like to be a guest. It's really not that much work and very little pressure. All we really have to do is show up, wear something appropriate, and make sure we either bring a gift or send a gift. But hosting a wedding is a whole different world. Now, I know you're saying to me, well, Father, have you ever hosted a wedding? And I haven't, but I'll tell you something. I've counseled a few couples and families after they've hosted weddings, and it isn't pretty. Someone once told me that to the degree the couple makes it through their wedding speaking to one another, that will be the ultimate test of how long they will actually stay together. And I think they're onto something there. But this past summer, I was visiting some friends, and they invited me for a summer dinner. And we were enjoying one another's company. And as the evening drew to a close, we were having a cup of tea, and their daughter, who was preparing to be married, came in from being out that evening, and she was very upset. She was in tears, in fact, and so they had her sit down at the table, and they said, what's going on? And apparently, her fiancé was not as interested as she wanted him to be in all the details of the wedding. And she was going on about how, he didn't really care what colored tablecloths they were having at the reception. So her mother said, well, what are you going to do about that? And she said, well, right now, I'm not speaking to him. And her father said, honey, I would never do this. I would never betray my man friends. But he said, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Not speaking to him is not a punishment, she said. He said, what you want to do the next time is just keep telling him all the details relentlessly. He said, that's the punishment. But planning a wedding is a huge pressure, and I know that many of you have done it. It's not only pressure on the couple, it's also a pressure on families. There are things like the top thing, who to invite. You know that whole wedding list thing? And for some people, that gets really difficult if they have big families and they have a small budget. And how do you eliminate the cousins? And how do you tell the cousins not to bring their little kids? And all of that? Who to invite is a big deal. What to serve? How to pay for it? How about the music choices at the reception? And that can be very, very challenging. If one wants a DJ that plays this kind of music and one wants this kind of music, how about the invitations? Do you ever see some of the invitations that you receive for weddings? I mean, some of them are so elaborate and ornate, it's incredible. And I think to myself, in a kind of cynical moment, they could just put this on an email and press it and save themselves a few $1,000s for an invitation. Then there's the RSVP. Who is actually going to respond and in time? I am notorious for not sending back the card, And I'm going to a wedding, and I go to check where the wedding is and everything, and I realize I never sent back the reply card. That's my gig. I never send it back. The cars, the tuxes, the wedding gowns, that's a whole other thing. And then choosing the wedding party. It can go from multiple cousins and friends to one or two people. It's really tricky. I don't know if I left anything out for those wedding planners, but... So imagine what it would be like after all of that planning if nobody showed up at the wedding. Imagine that. That's the image we have in the gospel today. The host, this king, instructs his servants when he sees that no one has shown up to go out to the highways and byways and invite anybody who will come. Anybody. And the scripture passage says they bring in, and this is a little scary, the bad and the good alike. Anybody comes to the wedding feast. But wait, there's one catch. The bad and the good alike are invited, but they have to be dressed appropriately. And what does that mean? Well, in the scriptures, as I'm sure you know, there are so many images of clothing ourselves in things other than clothes. That image is really replete in the scriptures all the way through. You've heard St. Paul say, clothe yourselves in heartfelt compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. That's an image that we would put on a garment of kindness, of humility, of patience. It's a beautiful image because it's something that we wear, that is a part of us when we go forth. If you have been to a baptism anytime recently, you know that when we baptize the baby, once the baby has been baptized, the priest says, you have put on Christ. You have put on Christ. You have been baptized. You have put on Christ. Whatever that image means for us. The mind, the heart of Christ we have put on. And symbolically, we put a little white garment on the child or on the adult if they're coming in through the RCIA. But that whole image of putting on Christ is very much a part of baptism. So, more is needed than just showing up. More is needed than just showing up. I think to myself of so many people who, for them, showing up is a big thing. Showing up to church, getting themselves there, especially parents who have little ones, elderly people who are very much challenged. Just getting there is enough. But in the scriptures today, we hear almost a harsh comment from the host. It's not enough to show up. You have to be properly attired. So what in the world does that mean for us? Well, first of all, we should step back and realize that we have, number one, been invited. We are part of that group of the invited. And the first question that comes to my mind is, have we shown up? Have we answered God's invitation? Do we make every attempt, not just to come to church, come to retreat, but do we show up to God's invitation in our lives? If you're anything like me, you may doubt that invitation. You may even shun the invitation. And some of you may run from the invitation. Because God might be asking you or me to do something we cannot do. And maybe something we don't want to do. Or something we feel we're not able to do. Those of you who stayed up until 11:30 last night for the movie, those monks in that movie started out, some of them, not showing up. They didn't want to do what was asked of them. They fought it. They ran from it. In the end, they came, and they came dressed appropriately. And I want to say something today that you don't hear in the scriptures, but I think we believe. That fear of accepting the invitation is not a sin. It's not a failure. We're not bad people because we don't accept the invitation. But what I do want to say is that we need God's help in order to accept the invitation. I admire people who say, whatever God's will is, I will do it. I put it in the hands of God. Oh, really? Good for you. If you can turn that over to God, more power to you. But I think we have a sense that we can control this. And that is not showing up to God's invitation. That's keeping ourselves outside. Who would want to follow the will of God when it's that difficult? But I think the point of the gospel today, and I'm trying to make sure that you know the point and that I know the point, is that the invitation is open to us. And by accepting the invitation, we let God guide our way to that banquet. We're not walking to the banquet by ourselves. So, when we come together to receive the Eucharist today, we're coming to an amazing banquet. And Isaiah gives a beautiful description of it in the first reading. It's a reading that we often use at funerals. In other words, the person who has died is going to this banquet of rich food and choice wines. But the banquet's already here now also. That's what we believe. And so when Isaiah says, the food will be there. The food is there at a future time, but it's also for us here and now. The strength that we need to make it through our lives, through our hardships, through the things that weigh us down. So we can come properly attired, or, to use a common statement these days, we can come with a fashion mistake. And we don't want to come with a fashion mistake. To be properly attired, we come with something we have been talking about all weekend. We come to the Eucharist with hope. That's what we need to wear in order to be properly attired. To be dressed improperly, we come thinking we can do it all on our own. That's not being dressed properly. To be properly attired, we come seeking wholeness from God. But to be out of fashion, we come thinking the world and all that it has to offer will make us whole. And we know that won't ever happen. To be properly attired does not mean we come with total peace. It does not mean we come free from fear or free from worry. If that were the case, none of us would be here, I think. But it means that we come restless. Restless until we rest in God, who is our source, the source of courage and our only hope. So today, let us heed the message of the Scriptures. Let us come to the feast. Let us wear the proper clothing. Let us open ourselves to all that God is calling us to. And may we have the courage to hope.